All right, y'all. Jones versus Combs, part 6. And again, I'm going to call Mr. Combs Diddy because I get tongue tied. So if you recall, we left off with Fahim Muhammad. Okay, I didn't get into him yet because apparently he's the go to guy for anything that anyone needs that can be taken care of for Diddy. So this is his picture. Diddy instructs his staff to always contact Mr. Muhammad if they are ever pulled over by the police in Miami or California. Upon information and belief, Mr. Muhammad spoke with the LAPD after G was shot at CRS. So if you guys recall, Justin Combs' friend G was shot in the bathroom. The only people in the bathroom that were in the bathroom with him were Diddy and Justin. The LAPD was in CRS and witnessed the blood in the restroom, and they went with the bogus claim that the shooting of G occurred outside of the studio. This was all thanks to Mr. Muhammad's connections within law enforcement. So, if you recall, CRS is Chalice Recording Studios, where the shooting occurred. When it occurred, Diddy instructed everyone, according to these court documents, to say that it happened outside by a drive-by shooting. But if you guys recall, I showed you the picture of the bathroom where it occurred. This is going to be in part 1 if you have to go back. So Mr. Muhammad has connections that made it happen. Mr. Jones had no reason to disbelieve Diddy as he had seen firsthand through shooting of G and the subsequent silence of the LAPD and the media that Mr. Combs indeed had the power to harm him. The LAPD spent hours in CRS after the shooting of G, yet there were no arrests. Mr. Jones witnessed the LAPD in the restroom, and it says pictured above, and again, that picture is in part 1, yet no arrests were made. The morning after the shooting, Mr. Jones and several others arrived at CRS, and G's blood was still on the floor of the restroom, and Mr. Combs hired a cleaning staff to clean it up. And this goes back to if you're wondering why, Mr. Jones stayed silent for so long. People also are wondering about Cassie. Why did Cassie endure? When you see firsthand someone get away with something that's against the law, you will be scared. All right, next up it says defendants Ethiopia, Lucian Charles Grange, Motown Records, Love Records, and Universal Music Group aided, abetted, and profited off of Sean Combs' RICO enterprise. Mr. Jones recalls seeing defendant Grange visiting Diddy's home in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California. If you recall, Mr. Grange is part of, let's see, hold on, let me check. I cannot remember which of the record companies he's an executive at. But anyway, according to Mr. Jones, whenever defendant Grange visited Diddy at his home, it would be in the evening, and he and Mr. Combs would disappear for hours in Mr. Combs' bedroom. Defendant Grange sponsored and attended several Love album listening parties at Mr. Combs' home in Los Angeles, California. These parties are sponsored by defendants MR, LR, and UMG. So again, that would be Motown Records, Love Records, and Universal Music Group. As evidenced above, these parties had Schmeck's workers and underage girls present. So if you guys go back to, I want to say, part 3 and part 4, you will see, of course, the images that don't have faces, but these girls were young, and it's not these girls are like 15 years old, okay? During these parties, defendant Grange knew or should have known that Diddy was drugging the attendees through lace bottles of De Leon tequila and Ciroc vodka. So, here we go again with the drugging. It is no secret that Diddy had specific bottles of alcohol designated for females and other bottles designated for his staff, his artists, and himself. This fact was detailed by former artists and bodyguards of Diddy's. As a sponsor of these events, defendant Grange had a duty and obligation to ensure that Schmeck's workers and underage girls were not present and that Diddy was not spiking the alcohol with those drugs. And those drugs are the drugs that they call, let's just go ahead and call it what it is. It's, date rape drugs, and that's what they are. On YouTube channel, The Art of Dialogue, former bodyguard Gene Deal exposed Mr. Combs' pill mixing method used to spike cranberry juice and orange juice. According to Mr. Deal, Mr. Combs would place ecstasy and other date rape drugs in the juices. On YouTube, The Art of Dialogue, former artist Mark Curry exposed Mr. Combs spiking bottles of Moet champagne in the VIP section of nightclubs. Mr. Combs would have a set of Moet champagne bottles for his artists and a set for women. This writer has spoken with several former employees of Mr. Combs who witnessed defendant Coram, and that's Christina Coram, instruct her staff to lace champagne, DeLeon, and Ciroc liquor bottles with ecstasy and other illicit drugs. Wow. If you guys recall, Christina Coram is Diddy's chief of staff, okay? That's the one initially that Mr. Jones said, you know what? He told her that he was uncomfortable with Diddy, constantly trying to touch him. And she was like, oh, that's just Diddy. So now we know. Mr. Jones recalls seeing defendant, and that's going to be Ethiopia, visiting Mr. Combs' home in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California. So y'all, I keep pausing because he's now bringing up again those people that's actually named in the lawsuit. So for instance, Grange, who he said was there even when the bottles were being laced and they had underage girls there. And then let's be real, these are underage girls that are being trafficked because he referred to them as schmex workers. So these are girls that were being trafficked, okay? These are people he's naming in the lawsuit. So Christina Coram, Diddy's chief of staff, is named as a defendant in the lawsuit. Now Ethiopia also is named. She is the former CEO of defendant Motown Records, the parent company of Love Records. All right, so that's who Ethiopia is, the former CEO. Okay. According to Mr. Jones, whenever defendant, I'm just going to say her first name, Ethiopia, visited Diddy at his home, it would be in the evening, and she and Mr. Combs would disappear for hours in Diddy's bedroom. According to Mr. Jones, defendant Ethiopia visited Diddy at Chalice Recording Studios during Diddy's writing camp. And if you recall, the writing camp is when Justin's friend G was shot in the bathroom. Ethiopia sponsored and attended several Love album listening parties at Diddy's home in Los Angeles. These parties were sponsored by Motown Records, Love Records, and Universal Music Group. As evidence above, the parties had schmex workers and underage girls present. And again, those pictures are probably going to be in part, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe even part 3. If you also go back to part 1, you will see me show pictures of all the defendants, okay, that are involved. During these parties, Ethiopia knew or should have known that Diddy was drugging the attendees through lace bottles of DeLeon tequila and Ciroc vodka. As a sponsor of these events, defendant Ethiopia had a duty and obligation to ensure that schmex workers and underage girls were not present and that Mr. Combs was not spiking the alcohol with date rape drugs. And you see a picture there. Let me stop it and go to part 7 because I'm going to run out of time.